So we will now carry on with the next company here on stage, which is Lifecare, and CEO Joacim Holter. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation and for having us, of course. I'm here today to introduce to you Lifecare, what we define as a high-growth medtech opportunity. We are a Norwegian company listed at the Oslo Stock Exchange, and our medtech opportunity is within this quite small capsule, which is an implant for the continuous monitoring of glucose, especially then, of course, for patients with diabetes. And on that note, we are, as we are addressing the diabetes market, we define that we have a $5 billion addressable market, and we have also a quite capital-efficient path towards our commercialization, which is about to start this year. Meaning that we also, of course, have near-term value inflection points. We will do this towards, of course, the human market for diabetes care, but we also have a kind of a parallel route towards the veterinary market for pets with diabetes. I will address that also a bit later. We are the second mover in this new generation of continuous glucose monitors. Which we consider quite an advantage because we have a company that has been kind of paving our way throughout the regulatory authorities. Hence, we have a path that is already walked up. It's easier for us to get through the regulatory approvals that we need. And our focus then, opposite to our competitor, is that we focus on Europe, while our first mover are focusing on the US market. We envision that we, within the next 5 to 10 years, will meet the peak revenue potential of around $1 billion for Lifecare as a company. Diabetes is, as many of you probably know, an unsolved, growing global health crisis. The number of patients with diabetes is constantly rising, and as of this spring, the International Diabetes Federation came out with new predictions and numbers of the spread of diabetes, concluding that as of now, more than 600 million people are living in the world with diabetes. And out of this 600 million people, approximately 110 million people are in the need of glucose monitoring. The kind of important thing also with diabetes is that this is not only kind of a hidden disease that is managed through medications, etc., but it's also quite a huge cause of death. More than 3.4 million deaths only in 2024, meaning one death every 6 seconds. And that tells us something about the impact of diabetes as a disease. As of now, we are at the tipping point within the diabetes technology community for the continuous glucose monitoring market. Meaning that both we have more patients, we have a broader use, and a bigger impact of this technology. One thing is that the amount of patients using continuous glucose monitoring is rising constantly. But I think it's also important here to reflect just a bit of the fact that in diabetes, as I also expect that you know, we have type 1 diabetes patients, which are the ones who are in need of insulin. That's approximately 10% of all diabetes patients. The remaining 90%, type 2 diabetes patients, that's where the real market starts. And on that note, I want to just emphasize that in 2025, continuous glucose monitors, for the first time, were recommended by the American Diabetes Association, also as the standard of care, also for type 2 diabetes patients. Meaning that it's not only a growing segment of patients, but we're also growing within the segment that is already huge. Continuous glucose monitors have become the de facto standard of care for the diabetes management. It started out in the 1970s, where we had where finger pricking to get the blood drop for measurement was introduced as the standard of care for patients with diabetes. Around the millennium, body-worn CGMs came to market. The first one was approved in 1998, and throughout this century, it has been increasingly going into being the de facto standard of care with the body-worn CGMs. What we represent is the future of continuous glucose monitors being an implantable sensor. And that's why we say that the future, of course, is inject and forget. Continuous glucose monitors, as a concept, is the fastest growing segment within diabetes technology. We estimate up to 2030 an annual growth of 12.5%, bringing us up from approximately $10 billion as of today, up to more than $30 billion in 2035, counting in Europe and North America. Even more interesting, our sub-segment of the continuous glucose monitor market is the injectable market, the implantable market. We expect also that the implantable market will be the fastest growing segment within the continuous glucose monitoring segment. As you see on this slide, the market share as of today is quite small in 2025. That is, however, based on actual numbers from our forerunner, the first mover in this segment, which is Senseonics, and they have approximately 8,000 users globally today. But looking at their growth rate up to date and also predictions going forward, we expect that the implantable market of the CGMs will reach up to $5 billion in Europe and US by 2035. So the market size is kind of unquestionable. What sets us apart? That's of course important, as we are the second mover. First of all, we are at the same size as our injectable, implantable competitor. We are definitely smaller. If you hold this one in your hand and compare it to the body-worn CGMs, we are definitely smaller than the lion's share of the market. Our core advantages is that we use the osmotic pressure as the sensing mechanism. I'll touch that in the next slide, but also the fact that we are aiming at the price point that we assume will be affordable for the users, and also the fact that we will be able to extend the lifetime of the sensors and extend this from half a year to a year and then to 1.5 years eventually. The osmotic advantage, and I'm not going to go into details of the technology. However, we are using osmotic pressure as the sensor mechanism because this gives us a high accuracy and a very good convertibility of the actual glucose level in the body. We have a technology that is proven, and it's also interference resistant, which is quite an advantage compared to our competitors, and also the fact that we are looking at a very long lifetime. We are stating that we will go towards 1.5 year wear time. However, we also expect to be able to pass that point and go beyond 1.5 years, but without making any promises, of course, but we will see that within the next decade or so. And our, of course, key point now is that we are aiming to translate the rapid market growth into value for our shareholders. Taking into account the market segments that already has been touched upon, if we assume that the implantable part of the continuous glucose monitoring market will be 15% of the total addressable market, and us being the second mover in this segment, we believe it's fair to assume that we will be able to reach about 25% of the market in a base case expectation. That will give us a peak revenue of around $900 million within the early or mid-2030s. And important also to emphasize on that note is the fact that we expect these revenues to be sustainable. We are, as I started to say, we are a medtech company. We are not a biotechnology company. You would usually, in biotechnology, you would see a rise in revenue and a peak, and then often a decline thereafter. For us in the medical technology sector, and also addressing a market that is growing and growing and growing, not only in patients, but also in usability, we expect that we will keep the revenue sustainable at a high level for years to come. I briefly mentioned dogs, or not, I did not. I briefly mentioned veterinary market and pets. There are actually quite a lot of dogs that have diabetes, and they obviously don't have any good technologies to handle and manage diabetes for dogs. We see that on our route towards the human market, as we are doing our regulatory work, we are able to take the technology that we already have in this small capsule and implement it in the veterinary market, because the hurdles, regulatory hurdles, are way much lower there. So as we are setting up our production, as we have a technology that is proven, we're also gonna go into the veterinary market to gain some revenue there, which is quite potential for us and good looking. It's important to emphasize this is something we do in parallel with the human market. So none of the things we are doing in the veterinary market are declining or postponing what we do in the human market. This is only a positive add-on to what we do on our main path. We have a focused and capital-efficient way towards our commercialization. This year, we aim to start with our pre-CE study and then go into our CE study. So to start to do the study we need to be able to get the regulatory authorizations that we need to go to market. We expect to gain the CE mark so that we can go to market in 2026, and we also expect to do our European launch in 2027 in the human market. However, we plan to do an initial launch in the veterinary market in Europe this year, and continue in 2026 with a full launch of the veterinary market, and in 2027 also to do US preparations, both for the veterinary launch and of course also for the human launch. For Lifecare, it has been important to ensure that we are not only a technology holder, not only an IP company. So we have built in-house both our sensor R&D, design work, and also the production and assembly. It's important for us from a value perspective to control also the production side of this, so that when we go to partnering to do sales and marketing, we ensure that we keep a bigger value, of course, in-house Lifecare as a company, and also being able to provide positive payback to our shareholders. Our capital need or financing need is closely tied to near-term value inflection points in our upcoming commercialization. We have secured our needs, financial needs for 2025. As of now, we are in the mid of a warrant period of exercise of warrants, so that we're able to ensure that we have financing going out 2025 and into 2026. Next year, we envision that we will continue to be equity financed, but in addition, we're also looking to get strategic capital, meaning investment loans from governmental funds. And from starting next year, we will start to get some revenues. However, looking forward to 2027, we expect that to be our first year of actual revenues. Our ambitions for 2030 is to be able to capture an annual revenue of $200 million. To get to that point, we estimate that we need approximately 75,000 patients, which is a very small portion of the actual market. Approximately 0.5% of the total addressable market, the target market, is what we need to meet these ambitions of a $200 million revenue in 2030. And on a longer scale, we're also looking into, of course, to adding geographies. We're starting in Europe. We will expand to the US, but the main part of patients with diabetes in the world are actually in Asia. So to go towards the Indian and Pacific region is something that we are looking at on a longer term, but also to expand the scope of use, not only for type 1 diabetes patients, also type 2, pre-diabetes patients, and in addition to this, also persons without diabetes that want to control their glucose level. Furthermore, we are also building a platform technology. Inside this sensor, we're using a chemistry that is reactive to glucose. We can adjust that chemistry so that we can measure other substrates, such as, for example, calcium and other blood sugars that would be interesting to read. We have an experienced team. We are located in Bergen, Norway, with our main office, but also we have our main production facility in Mainz, Germany, and an important chemistry department in Bristol, in UK. The company was founded back in 2006, and we are based on university research up to now, although we have accelerated over the last year and are now looking towards the commercial phase. And to sum it up, we are addressing a $5 billion market with near-term value inflection points based on a capital-efficient path with a quite large peak revenue potential of approximately $1 billion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. And first of all, diabetes is a very large therapeutic area, and a lot of happening in the field. Do you see this as a competitive advantage, or is it a threat, or do you see that more research could validate your?
All research will definitely validate our technology. However, all research done to prevent diabetes is fantastic. There is nothing within the near term that seems to be able to actually cure, thank you very much, diabetes as a disease. However, our mission is to be the sensor mechanism, right? So our only mission is to sense how much glucose do you have in your body, to give the patient the data the patient need to actually do the measures needed, being either insulin, being changing the diets, maybe you have to exercise more, whatever, but this will remain quite a sustainable business for decades and centuries to come. That's at least my prediction.
I understand. And you talk a little bit here in the end about expanding to the US. Is there any timeline in place there, or?
I think that for us it's important to focus to get this on the market in Europe first. And obviously from an investor point of view, you would always like to see the company to go to the US. So that is, it is on the horizon, and we are predicting in our numbers that we will start to have revenues and sales then in the US from 27, 28, maybe 29. I must admit I don't remember the exact details there, because our focus is very much to go to market in Europe, and the market is big enough here to actually to get us into the position where we want to be, 75,000 patients by 2030.
Yeah, and just one more question about the US here. Has tariffs they're now delayed any thoughts on going there, or what are your thoughts on?
No impact on our planning. I mean, tariffs will probably come and go. Presidents will come and go, and I think that we will just have to adjust to the landscape that is around when we start to go into the US market. So that is not the focus area for us now.
I understand. And Sweden is a pretty strong player in life science. Do you have any plans to pursue a parallel listing on your share here in Sweden, or any?
No, we don't have any plans to pursue a parallel listing in Sweden. However, I think it's fair to mention that we have an important partner here in Sweden, in Stockholm. It's our app developer and kind of readout developer, so data supplier. It's a company called 12 Analytics that is specialized to do CGM readings based on AI, etc. So they are an important player for us, important partner for us, and of course Sweden is an important place to be as a life science company in the Nordics. So we will have a presence here independent of the actual listing.
I understand. And as you mentioned as well in the presentation, you're active in the veterinary segment. And you talked a little bit, but what is the reason for targeting both humans and animals? It's not the most common mix.
No, it's an opportunistic mix, I would say. And the reason for it is quite simple. We have a technology that is proven and that is producible. So while we wait for the time we have to spend in trials to get into the regulatory approval for the humans, we want to follow up on the potential for revenue as we already can produce our product in the veterinary market. So it's not more complex than that.
Pretty clear. And if you follow your company here, what kind of news flow should an investor expect to look out for in the coming 12 months or 24 months?
I think that the first we disclosed some weeks ago that we have now applied for our first clinical study with the implant. We have done clinical studies with our sensors before, but now we have applied to do the first clinical study with the implant, meaning a wireless implant. So in terms of news flow, of course, the execution of the first study will be important. Second is, of course, the market access to go to market, the first sales in the veterinary market, and then also the initiation of our CE regulatory study. And I also think it's, I assume that following our market introduction in the veterinary market, I think that we also will gain speed on our discussions related to partnerships, both within the veterinary field, but also within the human field.
Are you meeting up with a lot of potential partners right now, or?
We are ensuring that we are on the radar to potential partners. What we see is that the number of potential partners are increasing quite rapidly. In the human market, you would have Abbott, Dexcom, and Medtronic as the biggest players. They hold about 99% of the market. And then we have a whole bunch of potential partners coming out of Asia with the same technologies, and who would also have an appetite for the next generation of continuous glucose monitors. So we believe that is an open field where we are working, and we have the most specific thing I can say about it is the fact that we have a product development agreement with Sanofi, where they have a first right of refusal to our technology.
And just to sum it up a bit here, if someone here or at home looking at you as a potential investment, why should people invest in Lifecare?
I think that this is a Nordic medtech opportunity where we have proven our technology. We have a very, very limited technology risk, if any. So looking at the pricing of the share, looking at where we are in terms of product development, I think that the upsides are quite obvious. This is a risk-adjusted case that I think it's beneficial to at least have a look at.
Thank you so much for the presentation here today, and good luck going forward.
Thank you very much.